one of the things that I think keeps us from um, having this deep, thorough somatic relationship with the animate, being able to listen to and hear the animate, being able to interact with the animate, is our tendency, conscious and unconscious, to view nature as a backdrop, right? Even like you go for a walk in the woods and you're on a trail and you're on a path, and it's like, oh, look at that view. Right, look at this beautiful backdrop, look at this beautiful, you understand what I mean, like this kind of tendency to see nature as something other, even if we're immersing ourselves in it. Like even if we're going backpacking, it's like, there's a tendency, and this crowd is probably a little less prone to this. But even I find modernity has to be kind of shed in layers and layers and layers and layers and layers. Even myself, I find myself sometimes when in, ecology, like it's like, no, you know, I have to shed even deeper, and I am this, and this is me, and this is moving through me, and I am in relation with this, and it's not a backdrop. It's not something other. Nature is not something other, right? Nature are the forces that are moving through this porous body all the time, and this porous body is nature. And so sometimes when we go for hikes or we get out into ecology, right? Um, we tend to focus on what we see. We're a very visually driven species. Yeah. So I am regarding nature. I am looking at nature as though I am in a museum looking at something beautiful. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Can you feel into that? Right. Um Starting to shift into a different sensory engagement with the natural world around us can really help. Right? I mean, I know like wilderness immersion. Um, I know teachers who do whole exercises with folks out in the wilds where they do a whole lot of work blindfolded and have to feel their way around and this kind of thing. And that's really interesting work to explore, right? Because we are so sight heavy that we focus on what we see in the natural world. Um, so I go on a hike, and the purpose of that hike is to get to a vista point, right? The purpose of that hike is to get to a place where I can see a beautiful view. Um, I'm a very visual person too. I love visuals. I love views, right? But there are other ways to navigate. And you look at animals and they don't navigate this way at all. They're not walking to some place to get to that place, and everything between where everything between point A and point B is kind of, it's nice and pretty, but kind of irrelevant until they get to point B and there's this beautiful view, right? That's not how animals engage with ecology. Animals engage with ecology very, very differently. Rhythmically, you see a very different thing happening with animals, right? We walk in a steady rhythm until we get to point B and then we stop. Animals don't do that, right? Animals, what do? They creep around, um, they pause, they sniff, they skulk, they right, like very different ways of interacting with nature, right? Could we bring some more verbs into how we interact with nature, right? Right, even just to bring like listening. Oh, I go into nature and I listen, right? I go into nature and I listen. Go into the wilderness and I wander. Yeah, wander, meander. Um, there's something beautiful about the rhythm of like the horizontal navigation that's happening through the animal mind and nature, right? Um, so Say we encounter a tree or a grove, right? Like a tree or a grove that we really want to deepen our connection with along one of these hikes that we're taking. Yeah. We can stand and look and say, wow, this tree and this grove are beautiful, right? What else can we do? So there are, and I go into this in the presentation on listening, there are somatic postures that help us awaken our attunement to the forces of nature, right? How we are somatically changes our direct interaction with the forces of nature around us. So, um, yeah, and Georgie's saying offer something, right? Offering. Um, Offering is key, and we're going to get into that not today, but we're going to get into that very soon. Um, but just how we are somatically, like how we are posturally. In the presentation, I showed a picture of Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings with his ear next to the stone, right? Listening, listening, right? If you want to hear something more deeply, put yourself closer to it somatically. I know this sounds very simple. If you want to experience that tree in a deeper level, go right up to the tree. Go right up to the tree, put your ear against it. Yeah, bow in front of it. Be in a receptive somatic posture, right? A posture of receiving, right? We don't always tend to walk through ecology in a posture of receiving. Like, what are some postures of receiving? Yeah. How about this? Yeah. Why doesn't everybody try this for a second? It'll also look really nice to see everyone's palms. So, um, yeah, if there's a tree that draws your attention in the woods, and you often stop maybe and look at it, try simply this: turn your palms towards it. See if and close your eyes so you're not so influenced by the visual sense, and see if all of a sudden you feel it a little bit differently just by turning your palms towards it. And I see some of you like rubbing your fingers a little bit, and yeah, this is something that can really just like waken up the faculties of listening. Yeah, listening through the palms, cupping the hands like this, like as if we were receiving or offering something, like this simple. Yeah. um and we're going to do a practice of adoration that involves opening up our palms like this and speaking like this, right? But understanding this like dynamic reciprocity that exists between us and the object of our attention, of our loving attention, that if we just kind of stand far off from it and look at it, it's different than opening our palms to it. It's different than like dropping our head before it. It's different than like opening our palms to it like this, right? There are very simple gestures that we can start to take that can change our entire relationship with the animate beings around us, the ecology around us. Yeah. Um, so attuning ourselves, yeah, full pranam, Anne is typing in the chat, casting ourselves upon the ground. I opened the presentation on listening with an image of someone on the ground, arms folded. And in the presentation, I included a quote of an experience that young Henri Corbin, who grew up to be like a profound Sufi mystic and scholar, he had as a young man, he um, experienced a rapturous state in the evening in the woods where he was taken into a place where he heard the voice of the natural world singing all around him and saw the earth manifest as this great green angel. And then he gave this kind of set of somatic instructions on how to get there. And he talked about getting close to the earth, like get closer, like proximity. This is one thing, like, people ask sometimes, like, how do I get grounded? Like, oh, I need some practices of grounding. And the first thing I always say is get on the ground. If you want to get grounded, like, get as much of the surface area of your body on the ground as possible, right? Mm. Therese is offering a beautiful practice here. Trace the shape or movement of something with your hand or your voice, letting the sound or movement follow the shape or movement of something. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So, you know, changing our postural relationship with the animate. And if you look at trance practices from around the world and practices of deepening connection, a lot of them involve simple postural adjustments that change the way we listen, they change the way we hear things, perceive things. You know, very simple. If you're in the woods and you're wanting to listen deeper to the voice of the waters and the voice of the wind, take your hands behind your ears and do this, right? It's very simple. This is ancient tracking knowledge, you know, so simple that we forget it. We forget it. We think that we're supposed to just walk through nature, right? You feel what I'm talking about here? Like, it's the simplest things that will reactivate connections that are long dormant and long buried. Yeah. Um, Listening through your skin, there's a specific type of listening that happens through the skin, so that when you're walking through the woods, right, brush your skin up against things, feel through your skin, brush your skin up against leaves, not poison ivy. Brush your skin up against, you know, against plants. Yeah, breathe through your skin, breathe through your back. Start to engage the entire somatic structure so that we understand that, you know, each of us is like each of us is a whisker. Each of us is a cat's whisker. Attuned, sensitive, strong, right? Antenna. The individual being is like an antenna. Yeah. Um, yeah, and Therese is talking in the chat about going back to the same place, the same tree or rock or grove. I'm sure many people do this, right? And interacting with it over and over, building a relationship with it. You know, I thought I had a relationship with a certain trail that I used to hike, and then I really started getting to know the different trees and rocks and beings along that trail, pausing, stopping. Like, oh, my goal isn't necessarily to get to that vista point. My goal is to be in relation, to listen to who's here, to change my relationship with who's here.